Okay, so this question is asking us to find a lot of information about farmers that are growing these three different crops. They're telling us that we have 500 farmers total. 128 grew only wheat. So since they are specifically saying it was only wheat, we can go ahead and write 128 in this section. 111 grew only corn, so we can put that here, and 90 grew only oats. So the keywords there are the fact that it was only wheat, only corn, and only oats. Now looking at the next piece of information, it says 208 grew wheat. So that means total out of these four sections, 208 of those farmers grew wheat, whether they grew it with another crop or by itself. So I'm going to hold on to that information for just a second. Next, it says that 64 grew wheat and corn. So if we're talking about wheat and corn, that could be either in this section or in this section. So we know that it's 64 total that is in this area here. And I'll actually go ahead and shade it in. So now we can go back to what they told us about the total wheat farmers. So they're saying that 208 total grew wheat. Notice that if this entire circle is 208, we can subtract the 128 that grew only wheat, and we can also subtract the 64 that grew wheat and corn to find out what's left in this area. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. If I do 208 minus 128 minus 64, that gives me 16. So we know that this area here is 16. Let me clear some of this shading here. And let's see what other information we can use. Next, it's telling us that 52 grew wheat and oats. So if we're talking about wheat and oats, that's going to be this section here. That's where the wheat and the oats overlap. But we already know we found 16 that grow just wheat and oats and not corn. So if we take that 52, subtract 16, that'll give us the number there in the middle. So 52 minus 16 is 36. So you can see now how we are well on our way to being able to answer these questions. We know that there's now 36 farmers that grew all three of these crops. Going back up to the problem, now we can use that 64. So it says 64 grew wheat and corn. Again, that 64 was this region. Now we can subtract the 36 that grew all three of the crops. And if we do 64 minus 36, that means we have 28 here. And notice we have one more region left to fill in, and that's going to be the farmers that grew oats and corn. And so our last piece of information that will help us with this is that 186 farmers grew corn. So that means this entire circle is 186 farmers. So if I take 186, subtract 111, and subtract 28, and subtract 36, that'll tell me what I have left in this region. So let me do that. 186 minus each of these regions gives us 11 farmers in that overlap. And now that my Venn diagram is completed, I can go ahead and answer the questions. So for part A, I'm looking at the questions here. They want to know how many farmers grew at least one of the three. So we know that there was 500 farmers total. All of these together are farmers that grew crops, of these three crops anyway. So in order to figure out, we need to just add up all these numbers and subtract it from the total number of farmers, which is 500. So you can do this however you want. I'll start from the inside. I'll do 36, and then I'll add the 28 and 16 and 11, and then I can add that to 128, 90, and 111. So I'm adding up each of these individual numbers to see how many farmers actually did grow corn. So 128 plus 111 plus 90. I'll add 16, 11, and 28, and then I add 36. and I get 420. So that's actually our answer for A. How many grew at least one of the three crops? That's 420 farmers that grew at least one type of crop. For letter B, they want to know how many grew all three. Well, that's going to be our answer here in the middle. That's 36. For letter C, they're asking how many did not grow any of the three. So now this is where we're using that total number of 500 farmers. For A, we said there was 420 that grew at least one of these crops. If there's 500 farmers total, we subtract the 420 that are growing one of these three. That means we have 80 left that are not growing any of these three crops. And finally, for letter D, how many grew exactly two of the three crops? So when we're talking about exactly two of the three crops, that's going to be, I call these like the little wings of the Venn diagram. This 28, this 16, excuse me, there we go, and this 11. So like here, this is 11 farmers that grew oats and corn, two crops. This is 28 farmers that grew wheat and corn, two crops, and so on. So if I take the 28 plus 16 plus 11, that'll give me an answer of 55 farmers. So there are 55 farmers that grew exactly two of the three crops. So with these questions, it's just a point of reading very, very carefully. The words at least or only or exact are very important. And, just kind of manipulating what you know in terms of each other in order to do some calculations and find the missing information in the diagram. I hope that helps. Thanks very much. Bye.